Good morning, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I don't even know how to like label this video because I don't know how to name the procedure that I just came up with. Um, I will show you a little bit shading. All right, so Control Shift click. All right, so this is the procedural texture that I've been using. I wanted to add freckles. Let's see, Control Shift click. But I had no way of picking the faces that I wanted to have the freckles on. I asked lots of people, I asked the developers how to transfer any type of information from the points over to the textures to be able to do this right here. The developers either didn't know or wouldn't tell me or didn't want to think about it. And no one I asked seemed to know. But I finally figured it out. Alright. So you have some output, like whatever your Boolean is, or like if it's just a simple 1, 0, I mean, you could stick the Boolean straight into here, set that to Boolean, and what's very important is to set this to point. This needs to be point, and you'll have to create a vertex group, and you've got to know the name. When you go over to outputs, you're supposed to be able to just click in here and select it, but for whatever reason, it doesn't. The selection is not there for me. I don't know why. When I create a new file and I do this exact same procedure, it shows up right here. Why it doesn't right now, I don't know. Which is why it took me forever to figure it out. I just typed the name in, and it works. So the output now goes to the vertex group of freckles. Then to import it into the shading node, you have this attribute node, and for me it's just vector, and I type in the name once again, and it has to be set on geometry, and that's it. You just transfer it over. So for me, I created a vertex group, named it, then I added a value, made sure it was point, because there's a couple of them, because vertex group is a point, whereas vertex color is a face corner. Face corner won't work for a lot of it because a face corner does not have a position. But a vertex has a position. A lot of the stuff that I'll do is like proximity, because right now that's just, it's very, very square. And what I'll do is I'll create some shape, some arbitrary shape, most likely an oval of some sort, and I will procedurally place it where I want, so that no matter what the length of the legs are, the torso, it'll automatically keep the freckles in the right place and the right shape, because freckles are like, the pattern is not supposed to be perfectly square, but that's just using this as a demonstration purpose. Yeah, this is only in here because of right here, because I scale it down inches versus meters. Yeah, I don't like typing in, you know, meters into here or centimeters. I don't think that way. I'm not metric. So I just type in inches into here, and then I convert it at the very end. Let's see. I think that's it. I mean, you can plug anything you want to into this. Like I'm only using the z part of this vector, and which will translate. Well, I could use separate vector and use the z, and it has the same result. For a second there, it scared me, and it looked a little bit different. I'm not sure what factor and alpha and color and vector. I'm not sure where those would come from. Well, I mean, I know color would come from the color node, but there's an actual vertex color node all by itself, but there's not a vertex group node. So you can type in vertex, and there's just color. But color is, like I said, a face corner. Face corner has no position, so I couldn't get it here. I could only use the index of the face corner, which is not the same as the index of the points. Let's see, geometry nodes. Like there's 574,000 face corners, but there's only 144,000 vertexes. So yeah, it wouldn't work. So make sure this is point. Make sure you have in the vertex groups, because this is the point based. And make sure you type it in correctly here. And this will allow for a lot of different things. For example, scars. Like anything that you would paint on, I can now do procedurally, whereas before with a procedural texture, you're just, the whole thing's fairly uniform. I mean, you could do a procedural texture on a modeled model. But if you do that, you get a UV unwrapping. But with a procedural texture, or excuse me, a procedural model, there's no UV unwrapping. And using any type of coordinate systems, it never comes out right. Like just this right here, when I used a non-procedural model, it had a face on front and a face on the back painted on. So yeah, when I use an image texture, if you try and do it any type of position based inside of here, it does not come out well. So that's why you would use, you have to transfer data from the geometry nodes to the, because if you can't use a non-procedural texture on a procedural mesh if you change the shape. Like if, because if I change the shape, the coordinates change. So there's no way to make them stick, like the eyes, like eyeshadow. If I change the position of the eyes, the eyeshadow stays in the same place. So it'd be, you'd have if I lowered the eyes to here, the eyeshadow would be in the forehead. Or if I made the legs 1 inch shorter, well, the head goes down with it, but the texture mapping would stay up here. So you need a procedural mesh for a procedural model. And for things like a scar, for freckles, for eyeshadow, all that, you need to know which vertexes are in the group that you want to have a scar on, that you want to have freckles on. And for the freckles themselves, I just used a Voronoi texture. I mean, it's just a simple Voronoi texture. Yeah, I'm not going to try to pronounce that. But I did have to scale it up really, really high to get them small. Let's see, anything else in there? Nope. But and I could use this to paint on creases or like blood vessels or all the stuff that you would see on a normal human body that is normally hand painted. I can now create procedurally, and it'll automatically change to fit the model as the model changes. For example, if I made the arm shorter, you you don't want the vein, out to here. You want the vein to go along the arm. I'm just stumbling around. Sorry. But you guys get what I'm talking about, hopefully. Anyway.